Welcome back to the old Straight-n-Strop shop, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I know it's been a while since I've made the last video. Those of you that know me know that I am in agriculture, and I happen to be in my harvest season right now. So, long hours, long days, long weeks. The end. And it'll be like that for the next couple months. But I really wanted to make this video because a certain thing came up just the other day while I was talking to a really good pal of mine, and it was about pins. So typically I will do my side snips on pins and just pop off the collars and pull the pins. And a lot of guys like to use jeweler's saws because they worry about these damaging, which they can. I grind this side down to flush it, so and it doesn't do it too bad of a job. I think the camera could probably pick up that they're not bad. So as long as you get them flush, you're good. You can do all you want. These will get sanded down and polished anyway, so not really worried about that. But sometimes you get things like these union scales here. So I was able to get the pivot side out, no problem. When it came to the tail, the wedge is glued, and I'm sure glue was on the pin. There wasn't any pulling them out. You're not going to get them out. And I have a jeweler's saw. A lot of guys use those. And if these scales were red, like the ones I have on this Hinkle's 410, then it wouldn't be a problem, because any kind of damage, because jeweler's sawing something is you are damaging a specific area to a point that you get through it and you separate two pieces. We can call it cutting, we can call it sawing, but when it comes down to it, you are removing material in a specific area. So things happen. You know, you get saw marks on the scales, you get saw marks on your wedge. Not a big deal if the scales are a solid color and you can't see through them. But with these Japanese union scales, they are clear. You can see that wedge in there. And if I was to saw through there, more than likely it's going to cause damage that will always be seen. Next best thing, what has to happen then? It needs to be tapped. All right. And that's a little tricky. I am so bad at setting up the camera and videotaping what I'm doing. But nonetheless, I can definitely go back through it and explain how I personally do that process. I will take my side cuts and I will get the colors off of there and get a flat surface as much as I can. If I have to, I'll use a mini file to bring it down and make a flat surface. I use a carbide scratch pen for scratching metal and measuring or anything. You can also use a punch, but as long as it's got a really fine tip, you'll be all right. Center it. Give it a couple whacks on the hammer. Be careful. More times than I would like to admit, I have cracked scales just by tapping a spot, punching a spot. So be careful with how hard you hit. The end of that, it will break the scales. Once you get a good divot there, then you can come in with a drill bit. This is a 1/16 inch drill bit right here. I typically will start off tapping with a slightly smaller. I would have to look to see. I think it's something like, what is it, like 1532 or something like that. I can't remember. Not my strong spot, I guess. Anyways, once you get a divot so you can tap in and get a good spot on there, low RPMs. You don't want to get too hot. You're not trying to melt or burn the scales. A little bit of heat. When it comes to restoring straight razors, I just want to put it out there that don't be afraid of heat. It's not, and whether you are polishing a blade or you are working on scales, Heat is not something that we want to avoid. Rather, it is something that we want to control. All right, so controlling the heat when you're polishing steel is the difference between cooking an edge and bringing a nice mirror finish. All right, not enough heat, you're not getting it. You know, too much heat, you're gonna wish you didn't. So heat is something we control, it's not something we avoid. So a little bit of heat is good, all right, because that does loosen up that pin. Too much heat, and you are going to you're going to make that 1/16 hole, or whatever, you know, unit of measurement you use, you're going to make it bigger than what you really want. Not too big of a deal on some tail end, especially if they're glued. You know, technically you put it in there, it doesn't really matter, it's already set. But when it's two different pieces, you can also do some things, you know, you can add some glue yourself when you put it back together, which will hold it nice and true. When you get up to your pivot area, your pivot hole, if you tap that out too far, you'll be able to adjust the blade, but it could also cause you some problems once you get to peening it. So you get the top of it flattened. You tap you a divot, you know, a punch hole, so you have somewhere to line up your drill bit. I use oil. I use a synthetic multi-purpose lightweight oil that is plastic compatible. And I understand some older scales are plastic, right? Celluloid or baculite, whatever you want to call it. Those are early forms of plastic. It just means that it's not harsh. So you can use it on bone. You could use it on horn. Whatever your scales are, this kind of oil will be safe for it. And that just that's really all that's doing is saving your drill bit. It does keep the heat down, but a lot of it is saving your drill bit. So this is actually the pin that I pulled out of there. I removed, you can even see where the drill bit went down next to it. So I removed enough of it and got it loose. So I drilled one side heavily, and I came in on the other side just a little bit, and that got it loosed up enough that I could take that same punch and I could tap, 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 and slide it out and get it out far enough that I can grab it with my nippers, my side cuts there, and pull the pin the rest of the way out. And I tell you what, out of 4 or 5 months, these are all pins from old razors, cut from scales, and out of all of those, maybe 4 or 5, definitely under 10 times that I have had to do this to get them out. And I would rather do this than use the jeweler's saw. It's just, look, it does well. And if it's a loose pivot, you know, like if the blade's sloppy loose and you can actually see between the blade and the scales, then you know what, go for it. It's not going to hurt anything. But if it's a nice tight razor, man, and you want to get it apart, you know what? Don't do it the way I tell you to do it. Do it the way you feel comfortable to do it. I'm just trying to relate the things that I have learned that works best for me. By no means am I claiming anything is correct, right, truth. I mean, you know, some of it is. This drill bit is going to drill into this. That is truth. What brand of drill bit you use, that doesn't matter. What brand of rotary tool you use, that's your personal preference, man. And what kind of oil you use, that's your personal preference. I'm just giving you a suggestion, all right? But I got it done. They're apart. Thank you, Jesus. So now on to these, which I have some bad luck with these scales. So those are real pretty. Too bad the other one, the scale is cracked. It's broke. Maybe it's this one. No, it's the other one. I broke it. I broke it during the ship. Man. It's such a sweet looking scale. But hey, I got another round on a different one. It doesn't have these top bolsters, but I tell you what, that's probably not the same size. They're all pulled up. So I didn't throw those scales away. Any scales that have bolsters on them, I don't throw them away. One day in the future, I'll make a video on how I pull the bolsters off of a set of scales. And let me reach over here into my scale stuff. How I pull the bolsters off a set of scales and set them. These aren't the best ones, but we can do it. And there's a way to do it, and there's a way to countersink them. You got to remove a little bit of material, but then once again, controlled heat will allow you to heat up the bolster and actually sink it down into the scale and get that real flushed look. It works. It just practice. And once again, you don't have to do it that way. You can take your little Dremel or your rotary tool and your grinder tip or whatever, and you can, I got a buddy of mine, he does the bolsters and inlays, and he uses an X-Acto knife, and he will remove the inlay or the bolster. He'll go to the next set of scales that he's going to put them on, and he will lay it down. He'll trace it out with an X-Acto knife, go back through with a rotary tool, and he will dish out the shape so that the inlay or the bolsters can sit flush. That works. I do that to a certain extent, not as heavy as what he does, because I'm going to come in with some heat, and we're gonna warm it up. We're gonna warm it up and set it in, and that'll be for another video. But for now, this is it. This is the tappy drill move, and we have one right here. Same thing. That's a little wider than I feel comfortable with. I don't know where my other little drill bit went. Well, I was going to tap it, but it looks like I'm not going to now, because you can't find that drill bit. So, awesome. Wherever it went. I think I put it in here. You guys were watching, why didn't you tell me where I ended up putting it? Anyways, let me get this back on, I'll show you. That one's already got a pretty decent hole in it. I got the pin to pull somewhat through, but during that process it popped off. So cheap rotary tool, probably from Temu or something like that. I'm not afraid to admit it. You know what? I care less where the item comes from. Certain things I would prefer to be American. Some things I could care less. My cheap rotary tool for $11 that I'm going to buy 2 or 3 of them in a year's time, those can come from just about anywhere, and I won't care. So once you get them warmed up a little bit, you can usually give some taps and it will start to reveal itself. Oh, that ain't it either. I'll be damned. Maybe one of these days I will invest in some better filming equipment, microphones, or lighting. But for now, that's not happening. I can't get a hold of it with him. Maybe. No. Not yet. So, like I said a minute ago, heat is not something we want to avoid. It is something we want to control. So I didn't drill through it, but what I did was heat it up enough that I could get it out. Because these two, just like the union scales, they have been glued together. And this is my tap and drill here. So this is, if that drill bit can slide through the holes, the pinholes, like so, then my new NS or brass or stainless pin will go right through it. So that is the, I don't know, the tap and waller method is what I'm going to call it. I'm basically tapping it and trying to heat up that pin enough that I can waller it out. And it works. With practice, I will say that. It didn't work out the best the first time I tried it, or the second, or the 11th or 15th or whatever. So, when I get off of here, I've got a couple things I got to get done before I go to bed, and get back up and go do my 14 to 15 hour shift on my feet tomorrow morning. You guys have a good time. Good night. Happy honing, happy shaving, happy restorations. Let's keep saving razor history.